Hi, seventh graders. Miss Goldberg again. I wanted to start today by making sure you have a chance to check the front of your classwork activation. So if you need to pause, please go ahead and do that. Make sure you've got all of these numbers correct. And then you can unpause and check your box plots and make sure those are also correct. And then when you're done with that, we can talk a little bit more about why box plots are so useful. So we're going to keep this in mind today. Each part of your box plot is 25% of your data because it splits it up into fourths or quartiles. And what's really useful about these is that they can show us the measures of variation really quickly and easily. You can see how the data is spread out. And that is the main point of using the IQR, the range. And immediately by looking at your box and whisker plot, you see the median, you see the range, you see the IQR, and you can make determinations about how spread out your data is. Maybe it's not very spread out. Maybe it's really close together, like we see down here in number 3. Or maybe it is really spread out, like we also see over here in number 3. So let's take a look at that. Okay. So on the back of that page, this box and whisker plot represents the number of cars in airport parking lots. So our 5-number summary, we can do that no problem. Okay. We see that the minimum is 75. We see that the first quartile is 120. Okay, the median's 150. So easy to tell when I have the box plot in front of me. And there's my max. Okay. And then I can tell which percent of the airport contains certain number of cars just based on how much of the diagram it takes up. So if I look here, all right, from here to here, that's 25%. The next part is another 25% of the data. And there's the third quartile, so another 25%. And then my final 25% is there. So they are not the same size, but they each contain 25% of the data. And you might be saying, how is that even possible? And it's possible because sometimes the data is really clumped together and sometimes it's not. So the blue contains 25% of the numbers, but there's so many numbers there that the box is really tiny there. And then there's just the data is really spread out between 150 and 230. So it looks like there's a lot here, but there's not any more than there are in any other places. It's just more spread out. So the blue and the green have the same amount of numbers in them. It's just that they're really clumped together in the blue, much more spread out in the green. So at least 230 cars, we're talking 75%. That's the percent there. And then at least 150 cars, even though it looks like it's more than half, it's just half. It's just that it's more spread out than the lower half is. Okay, so range and interquartile range. I can just see from here. So my range is going to be my max, take away the min. So just over 200. And then my interquartile range, I'm going to have Q3, take away Q1. And that's going to be 110. Okay. How does this help us interpret the data by how it's spread out? I'm going to give you some words, as you can see here, that you can use every time you need to describe, okay, a box plot. They're all words that could be helpful. Some of them may be more helpful than others, just depending on what you're looking at. So let's head back over to here for a moment, okay, because I want you to see and learn the word skewed. That was a word there that you might not have known. So if a box plot is skewed left or skewed right, it means that the data is super clumped together on one end and then way more spread out on the other end. So skewed left kind of means you got lots of data to the right and very little to the left. And the opposite is the case over here. Most data is on the left and then just a little bit on the right. And when they're symmetric, you could put a line right there through the median and it would look the same on both sides. And when it's symmetric like that, there's a nice even distribution of your data because each part of the box plot is about the same size, so it's the same amount spread out. So if we look here, some words we might want to use, okay. I want you to go ahead and pause this for a minute and see if you can think of some words that might be helpful with some of these. So go ahead and press pause, and then I'll share with you some words that I might choose from this box. Okay, so if you're back with me, I'm going to try to do this with my highlighter. Okay, so for A, I would for sure say that this data is kind of more clustered towards the left. So I might say there's a cluster over here. That's definitely a word I might use there. It looks like it might be a little bit, skewed right. But speaking of skewed, okay, let's talk about letter D for a minute, okay, because letter D is for sure skewed. Okay. It is, and if we remind ourselves here, when most of the data is to the right, that means it's skewed left. So I would definitely use the word skewed here, point out that it's skewed to the left. Okay. I might say that potentially there could be an outlier there. I don't have enough information to be able to tell, but it looks like there might be. And then as far as B and C, I'm hoping you noticed they are very similar in that they're both symmetric. Okay. But one of them seems to be clustered around the median, while the other just seems to have a nice even distribution throughout. Okay. So for letter B, we have a nice even distribution. It's nice and spread out. It's all about the same amount spread out throughout. So it's nice and consistent. Don't seem to be any gaps or clusters anywhere. Now in letter C, it's definitely symmetric, but it's clustered around the median. I'm going to say that that's the case too. Okay, this is something we are definitely going to continue to explore throughout the week. But for now, you're going to check your homework if you haven't yet. So what I should probably do is show you this. You can go ahead and press pause here again if you need to. Make sure you take a look at what you can see. Make sure the words that you're using, right, what we just talked about here, hopefully you have a better understanding of some of them now. but I want you to see how you could have used some of those words in your explanations if you didn't yesterday. And when you're done pressing pause and you're ready to move on, there is a Desmos activity for you to do. And once you do that, you can go ahead and get started on your homework.